Truth fears no questions.
Welcome to the Middle East Stream. I'm Marwa Osman. Well, the Saudi Kingdom's quest has often been set in the context of countering Iran's atomic program. It is now possible that the Saudis might be able to deploy such devices more quickly than the Islamic Republic. Earlier this year, the BBC reported that nuclear weapons made in Pakistan on behalf of Saudi Arabia are now sitting ready for delivery. It seems that the Saudis will not wait for the P5+1 talks with Iran. They already paid for the bomb. They can just go to Pakistan and bring whatever they need. To elaborate the rising Saudi nuclear ambition, with us tonight in the studio is Dr. Mohsen, Saleh, political analyst. Welcome with us, Dr. Saleh.
Good evening. Come to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And also via Skype with us from Berlin is Mr. Manuel Ochsenreiter, editor-in-chief at Zuerst magazine. Welcome with us, Mr. Ochsenreiter.
Good evening.
Now let us begin by watching this following report.
Over the last few years, Saudi Arabia has become increasingly distanced from its longtime protector, the United States. It viewed America's backing for Hosni Mubarak's fall from power in Egypt and its subsequent acceptance of the Muslim Brotherhood government as a betrayal. Then came U.S. President Barack Obama's refusal to enforce his red line in Syria, but the final straw was America's support for the recent interim agreement on Iran's nuclear program. Saudi Arabia is mounting distrust of the U.S. matters because whenever the kingdom has felt an existential threat, among which are Iran's regional ambitions, it has relied on an external power to protect it. But if it can no longer rely on the U.S., where can the kingdom turn for sufficient military muscle? Pakistan seems to be the answer, a country that the rest of the world views as on the verge of becoming a failed state. Indeed, Saudi Arabia has invested heavily in Pakistan since the early years of its independence. Given that Pakistan was founded in 1947 on a religious basis, it is not surprising that its leaders sought support under Saudi rules. The kingdom in return exported its Wahhabi teachings, ultimately fueling the Islamic extremism and sectarian violence of the Taliban and others. Saudi Arabia also invested in Pakistan's nuclear weapons program, the so-called Sunni bomb, by directly financing the research of A.Q. Khan, the father of the Pakistani effort. The kingdom's hope of directly benefiting from Pakistan's nuclear capabilities was blocked in 2003, when the U.S. discovered the prospect of a transfer of knowledge and more. Saudi Arabia views Pakistan as an important country for security and stability in the region. It views the Pakistan military as a professional force that can be relied on for Saudi Arabia's internal security. Pakistan's defense industry is more developed than that of any Arab country. Moreover, Pakistan also has highly professional people in the science and technology sector that can be used for civilian and military purposes.
Dr. Saleh, Saudi Arabia has been mobilizing its efforts against the Iranian nuclear ambition, even if it were for peaceful purposes. I mean, when in fact it has been running in the same nuclear race with the help of Pakistan since the early 90s. Now, this was reported earlier this year by the BBC. Why won't the Saudis just be open with their nuclear ambition and say that it is for peaceful purposes if it is for those purposes?
The Saudis seem to have went astray. They are not knowing what they are doing. I guess the way of thinking is wrong, not going into or in the right path in order to solve the problems they think they are problems with Iran or with other Gulf states. Like Qatar and other states, even like the relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood, although President Morsi went to Saudi Arabia and he paid homage almost to the Saudi king in order to to be satisfied with the Ikhwan's brotherhood, Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. However, I would say the Saudis are not thinking for the future interests, neither for the Gulf states nor even for them, because they thought they can lead the Arab world. They could not, because the issues they tackled these issues in a wrong way. They did not deal with the issues for the interest of the peoples in the region. For the sake of the United States, for the sake of the West, that would not make independence and make political will in order to preserve the capacities and the resources of the region. That's why I guess when they think of such thing of nuke or nuclear bomb or nuclear capabilities or nuclear technology, I guess Saudi Arabia in its skills or in its way of thinking could not tolerate using or could not deal with the scientific mentality or technicality of the nuclear materials. That's why I guess when they import such technologies, I guess they are mistaken and they are really involving in something they can't continue with, unlike Iran. Iran is a big country, resourceful country, very rich country, and in terms of popularity, 80 million human beings in the country, and historically Iran is more advanced than the Arabian Peninsula. That would really shed a lot of light in terms of the future of such thinking. They are probably spilling their money for nothing, because they can't make balance with Iran. They can't make balance with any power in the world. Well, that's why I guess this kind of thinking is a very
dangerous.
It's funny. It's
well,
the simple word is funny.
Whether they are capable of actually acquiring this technology or not, there are certain concerns. Let us go now to Berlin and ask our guest, Mr. Manuel Ochsenreiter, about that. Mr. Ochsenreiter, Western intelligence agencies have been reporting that nuclear weapons made inside of Pakistan on behalf of Saudi Arabia are now sitting ready for delivery for the sake of the kingdom. Now, first of all, is the U.S.'s relation with the Saudis so trusted at this moment that it is now acceptable by the U.S. And the West in general, of course, that it is allowed for a Middle Eastern country like Saudi Arabia to possess nuclear weapon other than their 51st state, Israel?
Well, first of all, the desire of Riyadh to have nuclear weapons is not new. This is not an issue which is discussed now. Since years, we debate about this. Saudi Arabia is not doing any secret about this, that they want to become a nuclear power in the region. So this is not, and I'm completely with Dr. Saleh. We have to say that the regime of Saudi Arabia somehow suffers of a type of collective minority complex, especially towards Iran, because of the historically huge differences. We cannot say that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the king's family with its countless princes and the very Stone Age organization is really sort of role model for a modern region. So they try to be the most powerful competition against Iran, of course. At the same time, Saudi Arabia is somehow the geopolitical proxy of the West, of the United States of America, and there we are at the answer of your question. Yes, of course, for the US, Riyadh is so trustworthy because I don't think that Riyadh would do a lot of things which are not approved by Washington.
But Mr. Ochsenreiter, in the event of these news being true and the nukes are actually ready for delivery, where does that put the remaining powerful Arabian and as well Gulf states from the running for the race? I mean, they might now be all thinking that they want a part of this power?
I think it's not an open question that these are horrible news for the security standards in the whole region. I think although there is until today no proof that the Iranian government ever wanted to achieve nuclear weapons, we have always to talk about the peaceful nuclear program there. It is a total nightmare to imagine that the Saudi Arabian king's family has in power those weapons. I think we don't have to discuss this, and it is somehow a Kafkaesque nightmare to imagine what they might do if we see how they run politics. But on the other side, we know that the Western dominance on Saudi Arabia, as well as, by the way, on Israel. We were saying Israel is the 51st state of the United States, but we have two Western proxies, if we want to say it like that, in the region. And this is Israel as well as Saudi Arabia. So they might take care. But of course, it is a competition against Iran. Iran is considered as a non-Western occupied or non-Western influenced state. It is close to Russia. We see what is now happening on the geopolitical stage on the world between Russia and the United States. So this can also play a role in arming Saudi Arabia to arm our own Western allies against the allies of this other bloc which is created right now.
Dr. Saleh, we've seen visits by the Saudi Defense Minister Prince Sultan bin Abdulaziz Al Saud to the Pakistani government and to their nuclear research centers, in specific in 1999 and 2002 as well, where it underlined the closeness of the defense relationship and explains the generous financial assistance that the Saudis have been giving to the Pakistanis for that matter, including for the missiles and the nuclear labs. Now, why did the Saudis go to Pakistan in the first place, and why not India, for example? And why not just bring the Pakistani expertise and build facilities inside of Saudi Arabia rather than risk keeping these kinds of capabilities in a country that is somewhat unstable like Pakistan?
Well, you have said the answer in your statements, and the Saudis financially helped the Pakistanis in order to build up this strategic weapons and missiles and bombs. But now the term for the Saudis to benefit from the Pakistanis.
Why did they choose Pakistan in the first place?
But they can't choose. First of all, they think that it is an Islamic state. First. Second, they have great influence on the class system in Pakistan, especially the rulers from Diya al-Haq till probably now, and both are under the American, let's just say, will or leadership. And the Americans, they have the last word regarding the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And Pakistan, really, it's probably an Islamic state who really appeased Taliban, who were grown and sponsored by the Wahhabis. And that's why I guess there is a kind of sympathy between these two countries. While with the Indians, with India, I guess there is no such kind of sympathy or emotional relationship between them in terms of religious and in terms of the nature of political rulership and the fellowship of the Pakistanis and the Saudis to the United States and to the West. On the contrary, the Indians, they have their interests, and they do according to their interests, and they won't go against China or against Iran. They have their interests, international interests. This is a big country and resourceful country. That's why I guess the Saudis went to Pakistan. But the question is, why now they are going for an atomic bomb, and they think that this kind of this kind of arms may bring stability. On the contrary, the Iranians, as Dr. Ochsen said, that the Iranians are not up to, or they are not going running for nuclear bomb. And they said it clearly in their statements, from the leader until the president and foreign minister. They are just going to benefit from the resources and the skills and the arts and the engineers of the Iranians in order to accumulate this experience, to use it or to exploit it in the energy and in the medical and in probably doing some researches and probably on the doing for planets, or doing every kind of experience for developing such country who've been prevented by sanctions, by trying to be contained from the United States and from the West. Now it's the turn for Iran in order to take its place. The Saudis, the royal, what's so called royal family, they cannot do that. They haven't done anything in order to deserve advancement or evolution in their political or manufacturing.
We will talk about this deeper in our second segment after the first break, and we will talk also with Mr. Ochsenreiter about the history between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia as well, but we have to take our first break for tonight. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The crisis of capitalism, the European impasse, the energy shortages, the emerging power of Asia, the economic power of the Arab world, the economic debate, informative, revealing, and progressive. It discusses the economic event of the world.
Economic debate, where the numbers reveal the truth.
Depth, clarity, substance. Beyond the discourse.
Beyond politics, beyond the shallowness of everyday politics.
We are back with Middle East Stream with Dr. Mohsen Saleh, political analyst, and Mr. Manuel Ochsenreiter, editor-in-chief at Zuerst magazine, via Skype from Berlin. Now, although the U.S. was working to avoid enrichment proliferation in the Arab world and arguing to Gulf leaders that the Iranian nuclear deal is a net benefit for their own security, it seems that the Saudi monarchy has set its mind on becoming nuclear itself through none other than Pakistan. The danger now is of Pakistan getting caught in a Saudi-Iranian turf war. Close military ties between Riyadh and Islamabad, though not new, have now taken a new dimension with Iran's potential nuclear capability. There is growing concern in the West as well that Saudi Arabia may be seeking Pakistan's cooperation in the nuclear field. More details in the following report.
U.S. President Barack Obama wants an agreement with Iran to allegedly prevent a Middle Eastern nuclear arms race, but Saudi Arabia is now pushing towards its own nuke program. Riyadh has a long-standing interest in nuclear power, but Western and Israeli intelligence services are starting to see signs that this interest is growing more serious and extends into nuclear enrichment. If Saudi Arabia pursues nuclear enrichment, even if there is a deal with Iran, then the victory to curb atomic weapons that Obama has tried to achieve will be at least partially undone by his own diplomacy. In 2012, the Saudi government announced plans to build 16 commercial reactors by 2030, and signed a technology agreement with China. But the Western intelligence agency have been expressing concerns that Saudi Arabia in recent years has quietly been developing the engineering and scientific knowledge base to one day master the nuclear fuel cycle or produce the fuel indigenously for the reactors it's trying to build. Late last year, the BBC reported that Saudi Arabia invested heavily in the Pakistani nuclear weapons program and could easily acquire nuclear technology or even weaponry if the Iranians cross a threshold. However, Saudi Arabia is not alone in this regard in the Middle East. Earlier this year, Turkey and Japan began renegotiating a pact whereby Japan would provide Turkey with nuclear technology, but the deal could be modified later to give the Turks their own enrichment capability if Japan agreed. So the race for nuclear power in the region has begun, but whether or not the rest of the Middle East is to begin acquiring nuclear weapons depends a great deal for now on the results of the P5+1 Iran negotiations.
Mr. Ochsenreiter, to begin with you, before the break we want to talk more about Pakistan and the relation between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Historically, Pakistan, a country that the rest of the world viewed as on the verge of becoming a failed state, it seems to be Saudi Arabia's pilgrimage site ever since Saudi Arabia received some 30,000 Pakistani soldiers in 1979 at the time of the Iranian Revolution, and then later employing thousands of Pakistani soldiers during the 1991 Gulf War. And most recently in 2014, we have Foreign Minister Saud al-Faisal and Crown Prince Salman visiting Islamabad to lay the groundwork to bring more 30,000 soldiers, more Pakistani soldiers and military advisors into the kingdom. Now, my simple question here is why Pakistan, and why now bring an additional 30,000 troops into the kingdom? I mean, what are the Saudis concerned about?
Well, first of all, we have to see it's not such a coincidence that Saudi Arabia is so close with Pakistan. First of all, both states are artificial products of the Anglo-Saxon colonial project in the larger region. So they are close, and as Dr. Saleh said already, it's an Islamic state, it's a Sunni state. So I think the things these states have in common are very clear, but we have to see as well that Saudi Arabia behaves towards Pakistan a little bit like the colonial master towards the colony, maybe in a nice way, but we have this relation there. We don't have a relation on the same level between these two states. Why is that like that? We should get a closer look to both states. We have Pakistan, a very unstable state, but with 180 million inhabitants, a huge population. I'm from Germany. We have 80 million population, which is a lot. Sweden has 9 million. So we have Pakistan with 180 million population, but with a very, very low GDP. We have on the other side Saudi Arabia with 30 million population. Yeah, this is 150 million less than Pakistan. We have in Saudi Arabia the problem that they don't find for many things. They need people with their own citizenship. They import people for everything. We have in Saudi Arabia a society which lives more or less with modern slavery. So it's not a coincidence at all that they even try to organize their own security organization with a type of modern mercenary troop. And this is nothing. This is all about.
Well, Dr. Saleh, Saudi Arabia is clearly now trying to build a role in the Middle East, to rebuild its role, let's say, which is seen as autonomous of the United States. I mean, this reflects Saudi Arabia's disappointment in U.S. policies towards Syria and Iran. And I mean, how much longer do you think that the United States will actually tolerate the Saudis' stretch to self-direction on the nuclear issue there? And might we see a Saudi version of the Arab Spring in case the Saudis keep drifting away of their prime allies?
Once in 2008, Condoleezza Rice wrote in the Foreign Affairs an article about the corruption of their allies, of the United States allies, and weakness and unpopularity and all the bad things she talked about. And the United States enemies are good people, popular people, they do right, they plan right, and they do everything for their people, for the sake for their people. And we come here to the result with the Saudis. They haven't touched or talked or tackled or paid money for anything, for any movement, and they succeeded. They never succeeded in anything. They do what the United States want. Now, when some powers like the Muslim Brotherhood or Iran or others, I'm not here talking about the differences between the Muslim Brotherhood and Saudi Arabia, but I would say that they tried to kill the hope of the Muslim Brotherhood as a competitive movement in Egypt. They did not allow, they toppled this. Now we are talking about Saudi Arabia, who want to be like the powerful countries, like the technological countries. They can't. It's very simple. They can't. They did not prepare themselves for such thing. And when they go to Pakistan, as Dr. Ochsen said, mercenaries. And you can't use mercenaries. That's been said by Machiavelli, that you can't use mercenaries in order to protect yourself. You can't protect yourself but by your force. Now Iran is protecting itself by their advancement in Iran. This technological advancement in Iran came as something gradual in their mentality, the needs, and to protect themselves, and factories, firms, and to exploit their resources. And they are doing all these things because the country needs such things, not only to protect their security, but this is something else. They are making a kind of civil and educative and scientific revolution in Iran, like the advanced countries in Europe and China and others.
Even though they are pressured from
the Iranians deserve such thing. But you have been using this oil or this energy in order to pay here and there, to bribe here and there, and to once George Bush told President Hariri, ex-president
Prime Minister,
Prime Minister, and Bush told him, "Your friend," he was talking about Fahd, King Fahd, and Hariri went to the United States in order to collect people and money for Paris 1, and of course as assistance for Lebanon. And George Bush Jr. told Hariri, "Look, your friend King Fahd paid $3 billion in one of the touristic places in Spain. Go for him and let him pay for you." You see how they really spill their money and exploit their money in a very bad manner. And now they are trying to destabilize the situation, like what they have done in Syria, what they have done in Iraq, what they have done in Yemen, what they have done in Bahrain, what they have done in Lebanon as well. So they are doing bad things for this region. And when they use such mercenaries, I can't say that they are really trying to protect themselves. They are creating sedition, they are creating strife, they are creating atrocities against the human beings in this region.
Taken from what Dr. Mohsen just said, Mr. Ochsenreiter, it seems that the development that mostly disturbs Saudi Arabia was that the US's decision to seek a negotiation solution of Iran's nuclear program. Now, the US and Iran are negotiating the final agreement to restrict that actually restricts Iran's nuclear program to peaceful purposes only before lifting the economic sanctions. So does this mean that Saudi Arabia's main concern is actually having Iran back on its feet, economically speaking there, and which most probably would also put Iran back on the big picture with its political agenda in the region?
Absolutely. We should see Iran is suffering from those sanctions. I have been there 2 years ago in Tehran, and I saw that these people really, I mean, sanctions are a thing which hits everybody, not just the government or a certain sector in the industry. So even with all those sanctions on Iran, this country became a very attractive role model all over the region. And we have to say it's a role model despite the fact that it is not an Arabic country, and despite the fact it is a Shia country and not a Sunni country, it is a very attractive country, a very attractive role model. So in Saudi Arabia, the people, or not the people, the regime is very aware what might happen when all of the sudden the handcuffs of the Iranian government, of the Iranian society, we have to say, a very young society, if the handcuffs fall on the floor and this people starts to do what they are able to do, this might be in the most positive sense a sort of technological and progressive tsunami in the region. And we have to compare those two countries which are about to become a role model or a leading country in the